Turning to politics, the Supreme Court has cleared the way for House Democrats finally to access Donald Trump's tax returns. The former president has fought for years to shield those records from the House Ways and Means Committee. The decision came in a brief one-page order that noted there were no dissenting votes. This means the House Ways and Means Committee, which has been seeking Trump's tax documents since 2019, can now attempt to access the materials before Republicans take over the House in January. Committee Chairman Richard Neal celebrated the decision, while the top Republican on the panel, Congressman Kevin Brady, accused the Supreme Court of, quote, opening a dangerous new political battleground where no citizen is safe. Joe, this has been a long time coming. Please. As I said, it's been years and years and years of people trying to get Donald Trump's tax returns through his presidential campaigns. And now with, 2 months or less of Democrats in power in the House, they're going to finally get their hands on them.
Well, they are, and we're going to be talking about quite a few other topics this morning regarding legal challenges, spurious challenges that Donald Trump has made to the United States Supreme Court. And John Meacham, one after another of Trump's spurious claims, whether it's about his taxes, whether it's about his stolen election conspiracies, whether it's about privilege, whether it's about the special master. We're seeing time and again the United States Supreme Court in these issues involving Madisonian checks and balances. We see this court standing steadfast and really drawing a straight line between themselves and the U.S. v. Nixon case back in 1974.
Yeah, it's important to remember that the court did the right thing in 1974. In July, it was the decision that he had to hand over that most incriminating tape, and that Nixon, after asking the question, is there any air in it, I think was the phrase, was there any give, anything for him to try to not follow it, and realizing that there wasn't, he then obeyed the rule of law. One of the ironies of Richard Nixon's life is that he broke the law, but then he followed custom and the law in leaving office. Interesting question going forward, and I think we know the answer, is whether Donald Trump has the capacity to follow the rule of law. We've seen him again and again launch assaults against it, very much in the tradition of Roy Cohn, his old lawyer, who was Joe McCarthy's lawyer. We're coming up on the anniversary of when Joe McCarthy was censured in the early 1950s. But what Cohn used to say is, don't tell me what the law is, tell me what the judge is. I think there's good news that the Supreme Court, you may disagree with the substance of their decisions, but as you say, on these important cases, they have stood by the Constitution. Question's going to be now, what does the special counsel do in all these various matters? What is the Justice Department? The Justice Department's now made its decision by appointing a special counsel. But we're entering a very complicated period that, I say it's complicated. It's not all that complicated. The issue is whether is anyone above the law? Is an American president, or let's be very clear, a former American president, really above the law? I say no. I think that most Americans would say no. And I think we're going to be testing that over the next few months.
Well, and the Supreme Court, time and again, has said no. And Susan Page, I think it's important not to conflate other decisions that the Supreme Court makes, whether you're talking about the overturning of Roe, a half-century precedent, which was shocking, but actually not surprising if you look at what these justices had said since their law school days. I think it's important that commentators don't conflate those ideological decisions with these constitutional questions regarding a president's power or a former president's power. And again, you go time and again, whether you're talking about the special master, whether you're talking about tax returns, whether you're talking about privilege, whether you're talking about all of these questions where Donald Trump's thinking, oh, they're my court because I appointed them. He's thinking they're going to rule in his favor. Not only do they not rule in his favor, but these decisions are unanimous, they're unsigned, and they're ringing I would say, a ringing endorsement of some basic fundamental rules of law.
Yeah, you really see, Joe, the assertion of the rule of law just in the past couple days. And one of the things I think is heartening is that in several cases, we've seen judges appointed by President Trump ruling against his interest, against his wishes in these cases. I'm thinking about the Federal Appeals Court yesterday that signaled it was going to overrule that judge in Florida who set up the special master for the search of classified and other sensitive documents at Mar-a-Lago. You think about how embattled former President Trump is on many fronts. The Atlanta grand jury heard from Senator Lindsey Graham yesterday. We saw in New York the court date set for the fraud charges by the New York State Attorney General against the Trump Organization set for next October. You really see sometimes the legal system takes some time to sort things out, to move ahead, to go through the process. But I have to say that for former President Trump, this has been a very sobering couple of days for him in terms of this network of legal challenges he's now facing.
And Willie, so much of this he should have seen coming. He thought that the judges on the Supreme Court were going to be like Judge Cannon, who yesterday just took an absolute drubbing in the 11th Circuit. Again, for those that don't follow it, the 11th Circuit is one of the most conservative circuits in America. It's probably the right's version of the 9th Circuit out on the West Coast. But I know a lot of judges. I know a lot of people that have worked in the 11th Circuit. I mean, yeah, they're ideologically conservative. They're no nonsense, all business. And here you had the 11th Circuit yesterday in this hearing make it very clear they're going to overturn what Judge Cannon did, which was preposterous. Legal scholars on the left, center, and right were saying it was preposterous. Well, the 11th Circuit stepping in and may perhaps get rid of the special master because there is no space. When you even go up to Clarence Thomas, you go up to Brett Kavanaugh, you go up to Amy Coney Barrett. If he thought he was going to get any special breaks on these rulings, he's been sadly mistaken, not only on these rulings, but let's say it again, in the 65 cases that Trump attorneys brought to federal court to try to assert widespread voter fraud. He went 0-65. This is quite a compelling argument for the Supreme Court on these issues being straightforward and calling balls and strikes.
And this all gets to Donald Trump's mistaken mentality, which is, if I appointed you, I have impunity under you, which is to say, I did you a favor, you do me a favor, like he's operating a business deal in New York in the 1980s. And Hugo Lowell, if you look at this 11th Circuit decision, we're talking about a 3-judge panel. To Joe's point, 2 of those 3 judges were Trump appointees. So he thought he was going to get a good ride, did not. What are the implications of this? What does it mean practically now, this ruling out of the 11th Circuit?
Well, we don't have a ruling yet, but the indication was that this is going to be bad for Trump because they were basically like, what's the difference between the documents case and any other defendant pre-indictment? And the only thing that the Trump lawyers could settle on is, well, he's a former president, and that's why he should get special treatment. And not even the 11th Circuit yesterday seemed to buy that argument, and it was a real drubbing, right? The 3-panel basically said, there is no instance in which you should get special treatment. Why should the judicial branch, given the separation of powers, be able to interfere and stop an executive branch investigation? And that was the fundamental issue at play. And I think, that's why everyone came away from that hearing thinking Trump's special masters basically didn't get terminated.
Yeah, Rev, you and I have known Donald Trump for a very long time. I guess we're not surprised that he would think that if he appointed somebody, they were going to do him favors. But it shows a complete ignorance of the federal judiciary, a complete, absolute ignorance. And he keeps getting surprised. He kept getting surprised during his term in office when judges that he appointed would rebuke him, would rebuke his policies. And this has happened time and time again. And doesn't appear here we are 5 years later. He still doesn't get it.